A lot of jealousy. Joe Jackson, the father, was still involved, who they were completely fearful of. When that man walked in the room, they all cowered like dogs who've been hit by a newspaper too many times. It was really very sad. And Michael, although Off the Wall had sold 5 or 6 million in America, and I'm not sure, I think we sold another 4 or 5 outside the United States, and he hadn't toured on that album. He did a couple of silly, simple videos for Don't Stop Till You Get Enough and Rock With You, and She's Out of My Life. So Michael was still very much tied to the brothers. There was this brothers album called The Jacksons that was coming out after Off the Wall and before Thriller. So Michael, although he had had a lot of individual success, as he did on Motown with Rockin' Robin and Ben, and he had a couple of individual hits when he was on the Motown label, he was still, you could still see that he was tied to that brotherhood. And it was only after the tour that took place between those 2 albums, right? There was a tour between
Yes, I remember that.
and when he went to the studio to do Thriller, and Frank wasn't his manager, but Frank was in his mind, as Frank talked about, because when he played that album for Frank, and Frank said, we're going to do something different. We're going to take you to a different place. I think Michael started to feel that he was beginning to separate himself from the brotherhood. And also being a little bit older and having a couple of dollars in his pocket, he was able to move a little bit further away from his father. His father was getting into other business stuff, although they lived in the same house, same property. They lived on Havenhurst down in Encino. So I think when Thriller was getting ready to come out, that's when he saw himself as a solo act for the first time.
Not until that, even though
No.
Off the Wall had been this giant album for him, his real kind of a moving into being an adult on his own artist.
Yeah, even though he had a manager, his own manager, his father was still the co-manager on paper.
Okay.
And there was a fear like nobody's business.
What were the first, Michael is seen as this incredible star, dancing, the short films, the music, the whole thing, but he's also seen as this marketing maven. What was your experience? How did you see that begin to crystallize?
Well, when I worked on the packaging, when we created the package for the album, and I went over to the production for the Billie Jean video, he's very quiet, he's very soft-spoken, but he's very intense, and he knows what he wants. And he's always open to ideas, but when he makes a definitive decision, it was done. But he would just sit there like, stand there with the video director like this and listen to what the video director wanted. And he would listen, he wouldn't interrupt. He was a very good person, very good listener. And then he'd go, okay, but that's not what I want. And then, because he was beginning, he had just had the first hit single had come out, the duet with Paul McCartney from Thriller. And Billie Jean, Frank had just put that on the radio, went to #1 in like 3 or 4 weeks. It was just explosive, and you could hear the train leaving the station when Billie Jean had been released. It was just this, how people talk about tornadoes, they always go, it sounded like a train, and all of a sudden, bam! Well, that's what happened. When Billie Jean came out, you could just hear it, the rumblings in the industry, radio, record stores would be calling up, and there was this fervor. I need another 10,000 records. I need another 50,000 records. I need another 100,000 records. And we had these things called rack jobbers, where you'd ship huge tonnage of records to this middleman, and then he would disseminate it to the stores, at the Walmarts, or whatever.
You should also point out that at that period in time, a lot of stores were going out of business, and the record business was starting to sink.
Yeah.
And Thriller
We had a bad
brought
year.
everybody back into the stores,
Just come out of the disco era.
right, where they bought
right.
multiple
August 13th was
CDs
what was
or
referred to as Black
cassettes.
Friday. Yeah.
Because the disco era had really crushed the sales of music for a long time, and Michael is credited with bringing back
Saving it.
saving the music business. But as Billie Jean, being on the set of Billie Jean, I saw his strength. And when I talked to him about photos for packaging and for publicity and for advertising and stuff, you could have like 30 photos on a pool table. You'd be at the recording studio and you'd go up to the pool table area where people hung out, and you'd had to print everything up. It wasn't like you could just show them on a digital camera. So we printed up all these photos and you put them out on the pool table, and he would just stand there like this for, a minute, 2, 3, and then he'd go, I like that one, and that one. And you go, but how about this one? No, I don't like that picture. I don't like the way my nose looks, or the way my ear looks, or I don't like my hairline. So you go, okay. So, you got your 3 or 4 photos, you went home.
Right.
And then I wasn't on the set of Beat It, but I remember talking to Frank. He telling me, well, we're going to put Beat It out in 2 weeks. I need a campaign. I need a marketing campaign. I need the photos. I need all this stuff. And I go, well, Billie Jean is just went to #1. He goes, yeah, I know. I'm putting out Beat It in 2 weeks. And I go, but you don't do that. He goes, I do. Tell us what was the thought about?
Well, the thought was I was trying to catch 2 singles in the top 5. So we came with Beat It, and it exploded on at 15. Then it went to like 8, and I was still at #1. And then it came down, Billie Jean came down to 2, and I slipped Beat It into 5. And then I held it at 2, and then I moved Beat It up, then I switched it to #1, then Billie Jean came to 3, then I kept it right in that circle. 1 week it would be Billie Jean, then you know who snuck in? George Michaels. I had to knock him out of the box. At that period of time. I said, look at this, I'm
Now,
2 and 3, he's 1.
And the thing that Frank did that was historic and never been done before. Explain album, you got to first explain what album radio is, and then talk about Beat It
Okay.
and
Thriller, you mean? Oh, no,
Eddie.
Beat It, yeah.
with Eddie.
What happened, we also had another format. You had top 40 radio, pop radio, whatever you want to call it. Then they had what was called album radio. And I brought a friend of mine up who worked at Columbia on the 12th floor, made him my vice president of AOR, Album Orientated Radio. And he was Bill Bennett, who was president of Warner's down here. And I went into his office, I said, Bill, I want you to work Beat It at Album Radio. Oh, no, can't do that. I said, what do you mean you can't do that? He said, no, that's not going to work. They're never going to play a Michael Jackson record. I said, Bill, don't be so negative. Come on, you got to work this record. Can't do it. I said, all right, I don't want to be like I'm your boss. I'm ordering you right now to get 60 12 inches, 12-inch vinyl at that time. I don't know if you know what vinyl is. That's what they make your seats and your tires out of now. But I want 60 vinyl albums with white labels. Don't put any name on them. Send them out to your people. Just say, put your name on it and call me. Well, they started playing it because they didn't know it was Michael Jackson.
It was Eddie Van
All they
Halen.
heard was Eddie Van
Playing
Halen.
guitar,
They
right?
were calling up going, hey, Bill, man, that Eddie Van Halen record, how'd you guys get him? Well, next thing you know, that supported my single, and we had it in the top 5 for I don't know how
Forever.
many weeks.
Forever.
We were up to almost 1 million units a week, I think, in album sales at
Yeah.
one point.
Yeah.
So it worked.
It was-
Michael was happy.
Now,
Then
let's,
Steffel wanted one more, you needed one more video.
Well, there was a period of time after Beat It that's when the Motown special took place. I was actually on vacation in Florida, and I was watching with a buddy of mine. We were watching the Motown 25th anniversary special, and Frank had teed up, I want to be starting something to come out on that Tuesday or Wednesday of that week, whatever the ad day was. And I think the Motown special was on Monday or Tuesday night. And, it's all this Motown stuff, and it's Diana Ross, and it's, the Temptations and all this stuff, and then people were waiting for the Jacksons, because by this time, everyone wanted to watch Michael, because Beat It and Billie Jean were so large. And he does, I want to be, he gets up there, and you hear the beginning of Billie Jean. And he gets into the song, and all of a sudden, he walks to the side of the stage, takes off the hat or something and throws it or whatever, and all of a sudden he just goes backwards. And we all just went, we didn't have cell phones back then or
We didn't know what
email.
they
We
could
all
do.
went, what the hell was that? He just glides across the stage backwards, and it was the moonwalk. And that was the first time anyone had ever seen it. Because, you know, we weren't at the rehearsals or anything, and he just did this thing called the moonwalk. And Frank put out, I Want to Be Starting Something the next morning, and went right to #1. And we sold, that week, we sold 1,100,000 copies of that record in 1 week. Now, you got to remember, this album's already months old by this time. And then there were a couple of singles in between that we were playing with, PYT and Human Nature, which was written by a couple of members of Toto. And Frank and I were talking on the phone. I said, you know, there's a chance here. I mean, we're 6 singles into this, 7 singles into this. There's a chance here we can take this thing to the moon. But we need something different. We need something special. We need a video, but, you know, I mean, what else can this guy do? And I called Frank and I said, you got to do, you got to figure something out here.
So I went to the house, accompanied by his lawyer and accountant, because they wanted to see if I could pull this off, I think. So he comes downstairs and we're talking, and I said, Michael, we need one more video. No, there's no more videos. I'm done. You know, I can't think of another song. Yeah, Thriller. Thriller, you really think so? I don't know. What should I do? I said, just make it scary and dance, and, you know, that's it. Just make it scary. It's the truth. Because I say things sort of like off the cuff. I said, you know, just make it scary. Well, who should direct it? Now, he got me a little stumped. I said, well, the only guy I know, I said, hey, that new Psycho movie just came out, Psycho 2. Get that director. He'll do it because he makes scary movies. In fact, they're so scary I can't watch them. They said, okay. So I tell Larry what's going on. They can't get that particular director. Larry gets John Landis. So I come out to see the progress. And Larry pulls me aside and says, Frank, we're at $200,000.
Yes.
I said, all right. So I go back to New York and I tell my boss, Don Dempsey, I said, listen, we're at 200. I said, but it's probably going to go to 300. What are you, nuts? What are you guys doing out there? You and Stetzel, what are you know? Well, so a couple weeks later, Yetnikoff says to me, Frank, go back out there and see what's going on. Okay. I fly back out. Stetz, how we coming here? Well, we're at 600,000. I said, okay. I go back. I said, well, we're at 600. You know, we're finishing it up. Don't worry, you know. So they're like, who's paying for this? We're taking it out of your salary. You and Stetzel are nuts. You two guys, you know, okay. So I go out for one last time, and I see it. They show it to me before they tell me the price, all right? And it was phenomenal. We were at $1.2 million. So I come back, and I tell Yetnikoff and Don Dempsey $1.2 million. I had to get smelling salts to revive them. So that went well. I promised them it was a hit. I promised them it was, you know, a hit film. I said, you're going to love it. It's unbelievable. It's this, it's that. So now we get it all set up. We have the debut on MTV. You know, everybody's ready to play this. We're teasing all these outlets. And I'm at my desk, and Michael calls.
Oh, yeah.
Frank. Yeah, Mike, what's up? You have to do me a big favor. Yeah, what do you want? You have to destroy all of the tapes on Thriller. I said, what? I said, we just spent $1.2 million and another 300,000 setting this thing up. Well, I can't, no, you have to destroy it. I don't want, all the negatives have to be burnt, and you have to promise me. I said, why? He said, well, I played it for the church, and at that time he was a Jehovah's Witness, and they said, you're the devil. I said, Mike, you know what? I said, you got to let me think for like, give me 24 hours. We'll figure this out. So now I call his lawyer. I call Stetzel. we come up with the idea, Stessel does, to put a disclaimer at the bottom. So we sell him on the disclaimer, or Thriller never would have seen the day of light. It was like, we'd all been out of job. We never would have been on this stage. That I can guarantee you. The funny thing about doing that project, and even when I left Epic and worked for Michael directly, every crazy idea I had or Michael had, Stessel listened to. I mean, it was been very easy for him to dismiss, because we came up with some real winners. But he let us do whatever we wanted, and so did Dempsey, and so did Yetnikoff, who just didn't even want to hear about it anymore. He just thought I was off the market anyway.
Now, we're going to want to hear some of those. So, but before we do, I want to go back to Stess about,
Well, just let me say
oh,
one
sure,
thing.
sure.
I was laughing because Steve said that the recording budget was $150,000.
Just sign them.
They were congratulating me. I kept bad at 2.2. They thought I was a genius.
Times change. Times
Well,
change.
the first one, and this is what I was thinking, going back to Larry, if I recall, the budget for Billie Jean was $64,000. And everybody in the marketing department at the time, I was in the marketing department in New York, it was like, that was double anything we had done. I had just done Girls Just Want to Have Fun with Cindy. We went $3,000 over, and it was $33,000, and I thought Dawn was going to hang me for that. And then, I mean, Billie Jean was really this giant step forward in video production.
Well, the word video is important because when MTV started, all of the hit artists were English. Animant and Human League and, Clash and so on, because there were no videos made in America. The only video that was made was Meatloaf. Paradise by Dashboard Light, which we made, the company made as a promotional film to introduce this guy with this really bizarre name, Meatloaf. So I remember, 6 months before the album even came out, we used to sit in production meetings and we'd just make fun of this guy's name, Meatloaf. Couldn't believe it. But I'm sure they did that 10 years earlier with the Beatles. But
You do that with everybody. I
Exactly.
think. Everybody will tell you, for those of you who are musicians, excuse me, the best judges are your fans, obviously. But we've all seen a lot of people, Meatloaf was too fat, too ugly, his hair was too long, the songs were too operatic, and they were 7 minutes long. Meanwhile, it sold 43 million records.
exactly.
And these are experts at the time saying this. Every record company passed on it. You
Yeah,
know?
that's like saying Mark Volman would be a successful artist. There you go.
Well, there's an interesting thing here too, because of the international appeal of Meatloaf and the money the company spent to shoot Paradise probably led to the opportunities to expand the budgets on Michael later.
And the videos that were coming in from England were made for a few $1,000s, and because that's the way they made videos in London.
Yeah, but how about MTV didn't want to play
Michael,
Michael.
because
he was black,
black.
not because it was good. So it took the combination of Walter Yetnikoff calling up, what was Bill Freston's brother's name?
Tom,
Tommy Freston, who was the
head of MTV.
head of MTV, and me going to the program director at the same time, showing him all the top 40 and AOR radio that was playing him. I treated it like it was a radio station. When you're trying to get that WLS in, or you guys don't even know what that is. You older guys know what WLS is. But, trying to get them to play that, then it went crazy for a while.
In Europe, on this Meatloaf thing, that album had been out. We released it, and it was out a year. And Arnold Levine, who we all worked with, genius film guy, at a time when he was making them only, as Larry said, for international. Somebody came up with the idea to take Paradise by the Dashboard Light and do a Dutch translation underneath, with the subtitles underneath. And that record that was doing nothing in Holland exploded and eventually sold over 1 million units because of the video. That's how critical multilingual type videos are, or were at that time, and I'm sure they are today.
There's only 300,000 people living in there, too.
Yeah, it was huge.
Well, by the way, there's an interesting folklore that existed back then that you guys will all remember on Thriller, that literally the international people at CBS Records came back and said that there literally were some small countries, third world countries, where there were more Thriller albums sold than there was equipment to play them on.
Right.
And I don't know if you guys remember hearing that. I mean, it was probably hype from our European guys, but, you know.
We couldn't collect in those countries anyway. I looked at on Thriller when we did Bad. I sold China 1 million copies. We wouldn't send them the masters.
Right.
Because they take the masters and, you know, reproduce them and sell them for $10.